on what happened last night, where the money, the finance ministry confirmed that the $600 million hit our accounts. I mean, how important is that? Before we even open up, that is the first manifestation of this deal that the board approved. How important is that money, considering where we are now in the economy?
Thank you once again, Evans, and good morning to your viewers and listeners again. I believe that it is important and that the money has come at the right time. Why is that? Because as said, last week thereabout, we were aware that the reserves of the central bank was about 3 weeks of import cover. And that meant that if nothing came in immediately, possibly it could have come in with a lot of speculation and people rushing in, and the whole uncertainty around that environment is something that is not needed in economic management. So indeed, this comes in at the right time. I believe that Ghana, as the governor indicated, has a lot of goodwill globally. Everybody wants to see the shining star of Africa do well. So in terms of that, and the evidence also points that whenever we have embarked on any fund-assisted program, we excel. The challenge has always been when we exit, then what happens? The indiscipline tends to creep in, and then we do not build resilience, and then with the slightest shock, we find ourselves wanting and we go back. So I think that it came in at the right time. I mean, when you compare other countries such as Zambia and Sri Lanka and others, Ghana's deal has come in at a record time. And I think that it's not a time to celebrate. It is a call for us to take advantage of the goodwill we have to do the right things going forward.
Yeah, and that last bit is interesting because Dr. Twumasi, I want to bring you in. You were with me on PM Express this week when Dr. Twumasi Baffour's other colleague, Professor Godfrey Bokwing, used the expression, well, it's not time to pop the champagne just yet. But the reality is, if you consider what Zambia went through, 2 years, and they're currently still struggling, to do this in 10 months, it's significant, is it not?
No, so there are two quick things to that, right? So Zambia first applied to the G20 framework in February of 2021. And then in August of 2020, they got that 38-month ECF program. So they also have an IMF program just like us, right? But what they've got to do beyond that is getting those creditor agreements, the external creditors to agree on the various reprofiling or the relief that would be granted them. And this is where they are stuck at the moment. So Ghana, likewise, we've gotten a program, we've gotten some release of funding, but all the subsequent releases of funding, they're all contingent on meeting certain program benchmarks. And one of the key things is actually getting the external creditors, both the bilateral ones, so the Paris Club in China, as well as the private creditors, the Eurobond guys, to agree to some form of, restructuring of the terms. So that's the distinction there, that both of them have a fund program. Both Ghana and Zambia have got to do a debt restructuring exercise. And if probably there's any lesson from Zambia, is the fact that the external debt restructuring exercise often can be complicated. And when you look at Ghana's one, with what we have committed ourselves to under this IMF program, the very first table under the summary document, that 126-page document that they produced, right? There is a table there that shows you the proposed program financing commitments. And between 2023 and 2026, we have a financing gap of $15 billion. In 2023 alone, it's $4.2 billion. Out of that $4.2 billion, $1.7 billion is going to be coming from the IMF, the World Bank, and other sort of financing partners. But $2.5 billion, so that's 60% of that $4.2 billion, It's financing that we haven't gotten yet. It's all contingent on the conclusion of the external debt restructuring. So those deferred interest payments and principal or you name it. And if we're not able to get those monies coming in, 2.5 billion in 2023, another 2.2 billion in 2024, and so forth and so on, then we might then become stuck in the same process as Zambia and others, are struggling with. So that's just a bit of clarification there.
Dr. Twumasi Baffour, he's right. I mean, because you look at the point 3 under the release that came in, it says securing timely debt restructuring agreements with external creditors will be essential for the successful implementation of the new ECF arrangement. And in other words, yes, we have the deal, 600 million had come in, but to get anything more, it would be critical now to get external creditors to agree. But many will say, well, if you look at the commitment from China and the Paris Club, of course, then you have to go to the Eurobond, investors also to try and restructure. Should this be of concern, considering Twumasi's point about the Zambia example? They're still stuck now because, yes, they got the deal like us, but they haven't received the funding yet because they haven't managed to restructure fully.
Essentially, I acknowledge Theo's concern, and I believe that in terms of restructuring of the external debt, it is not as easy or simple as compared to the domestic debt restructuring, where essentially it got to the point of whether it's a take it or leave it situation. The external debt restructuring, it's a difficult one. You are dealing with different parties. With the bilateral creditors, I believe that there is still, at the moment, Ghana has put a moratorium on servicing of its debt and all that, declared bankruptcy in that regard. When it comes to commercial creditors, I know that the government would have to deal with, for example, the London Club, where you are looking at individual commercial creditors. It's a bit tricky, but there are different approaches. I would tread on a more optimistic perspective that indeed it will be difficult, but I think that when we get our act together and get to organize things, it shouldn't be an impossibility. The fact that Zambia is struggling to deal with it should serve as a lesson to us for us going forward. I think there are a number of issues that are there. Are we going for debt conversion, for example? What are the implications? Essentially, I mean, we are doing this for the first time as a country, so it's uncharted waters. Yeah. But I think that whatever it is, we have a deal, at least on the reserve side now. There is no pressure on our balance of payment position. We can organize a few things domestically whilst we proceed on the foreign aspect. But in all this, I think that as a country, what lessons are we learning? I think it is critical. We should not get to this point again.
Yeah.